you just can't stop trying to get better.
Welcome everyone to the Sports to Business podcast. I'm really excited today to have someone on the show from Western Canada, because a lot of times I have people on the East Coast, we got somebody from the West Coast and someone who's literally tore it up in the CFL. So welcome to the show, Javier Glad.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm really excited to jump into your career, everything that you've been through. So just a quick introduction for you, Javier. You're from Calgary originally, went to UBC, played football, 3-time All-Canadian, won the CFL, 15th overall, won a Grey Cup, transitioned, and now you have your own company, which is growing year over year within the construction technology space. That's a pretty impressive career, and I'm sure everybody listening and watching can't wait to learn how you execute on everything in your life so far, and kudos to a great career.
Well, thank you very much. You read my bio better than I could have ever done it. So you're hired. Yeah.
Thanks,
no, thank you very much. It's been obviously a meandering path to get to some of those things, some ups, some downs, but I'm sure we'll dive into it today. But no, I've been very fortunate to have good people around me and like lots of loving family, all that kind of stuff. And I feel very fortunate right now today to be able to get up every day and have something to work towards, which is what football and sports often teach you, right? You just get up and get better every day. Not everyone has that benefit, and I really feel fortunate to have that.
So what are you doing today, Javier?
This is our 7th year in business. So my friend of mine from business school, we started a company. We did a startup in 2014, early 2014. Yeah. And we thought we were doing 3D printing at first. So we thought we were going to do kind of like 3D modeling, automation, and do physical 3D printing. So we had a storage locker. We did the very old school bootstrap startup style where you just kind of, don't spend any money as much as possible, ramen noodles, that whole thing. And you try to turn around and create a business. One thing we realized very quickly was that the digital side was much more valuable than this physical 3D print that we were trying to make in the construction space. So we very quickly pivoted and just focused on the digital side.
That's awesome. I'm sure a lot of the pivots that you did execute were probably ingrained in your mind from football. All the adjustments you probably make at halftime and during the plays, right?
It's a chess match, right? It really is. And you see the best teams, the best coaches are the ones that can adjust. I mean, what I think I kind of learned through sports, especially at a higher level sports, is there's kind of two coaches styles. There's one that is a system coach, and then goes and finds people to fit into that system, right? And then there's the coaches that are known as players coaches. So they say, well, what players do I have? And they fit the system for the players, right? So, and I don't think necessarily one or the other is better. It's just different. And I kind of learned in business, there's a lot of similarities, especially when you're building a team. Mm-hmm. And, I've kind of taken the path. I think business needs a hybrid. You need to have a little bit of an idea of structure and, a system. You have to build systems, especially technical businesses like we have, very technical, a lot of engineers, stuff like that. You need to think systems, but you also need to reverse engineer the people you have on your team and put them in good positions so if you have a great talent that's in the wrong position, that's not going to help you as a company. So you have to have that process, say, how do I put the best players on the field in the best positions? That's really important.
That's really true when you look at somebody taking over a new business unit, right? Like, let's say I take somebody's team over and now there's a team already in place. I have to work with the team, which means I got to figure out a way to make a new system out of people that I have. You can't just bring in your own team every single time when you have 10, 20 people on a team, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that also, we're going to get pretty nuanced here, but if you take a step back, it depends what the company needs at that time. If the company is requiring change and because they're underperforming, then maybe you need someone that comes in and blows a few things up. But generally, human beings, companies are just an aggregate of a bunch of individuals, right? So they come together for a common goal. So people have human nature when they're in their workplace. So if you just show up as a new manager, take over a new team and blow things up immediately, of course, you're going to have nothing but pushback probably. But so there needs to be some finesse there on how that's happening. But, I guess it depends on what the company needs. But generally, how I think the best leaders in organizations that I've seen, they spend the first 30 days watching, observing, two eyes, one mouth kind of thing. And then they learn what's happening and then they make moves, right? And that's probably best practice, but I'm sure lots of people come in and just day one start blowing things up. And
No, I've tried both. I've tried the day one, and then I've learned, and then I tried the 30-day, and then I blew stuff up. So that worked a lot better. So we lived through it.
I don't have much experience with that, but I've only done from scratch.
Yeah.
And building from scratch is harder in some ways and easier in other ways, right? Because you can kind of mold the
Awesome.
team the way you like it.
Javi, let's jump earlier into your life. How do you start? So let's say in Calgary, how do you start in the game of football? How did you go to UBC? What was that entire journey like?
Yeah, so I have lived with my mom growing up. I have older brothers, and one of my brothers also played in the CFL, and he was 12 years older than me. So at the time, his name is JP. He pretty much took care of me. My mom worked a lot, and so just kind of making ends meet. And my brother was around, and he was a football player. He played at the University of Calgary, and then he went and played in the CFL. And so I was really just wanted to be like him. I think every Halloween until I was about 10, I dressed up as a football player using my brother's pads. So I put his pads on and I walked down the street. And so that was really my biggest hero, my biggest, the person I looked up to by far was my big brother, JP. I have other brothers too. They're just, Oscar and Jose, they're different things. But JP was definitely my role model growing up. And that's how I got into football. I didn't start playing until I was grade 9. So I was basketball, baseball, kind of all the traditional baseball, basketball, little hockey. And so I didn't get football until I was grade 9, but I loved it. I fell in love with the sport, and I went to a great program in Calgary called St. Francis High School, the Browns. Had lots of great players come out of there, and amazing coaching staff. And if I look back, I was just messaging with my old coach recently, and it's amazing how formative those years were. Like I can still hear my high school coach, Joe Stambini. I can hear his voice in my head still, to this day. I'm 39 years old. And the thing that program instilled with me is the idea of putting the team first. That was a big thing. We used to have no rock stars, we used to say. So you weren't allowed to take your helmet off. You weren't allowed to celebrate, a little different than they do it today. I don't know actually if the program still does this, but we were like all class, all been there before. We would play the game. We would win by 30 points. We'd get back to school and we'd have to run hills, because we weren't good enough kind of thing. So it was very formative for me, and I was very fortunate to be in that program. And then I went to UBC because I was a two-sport athlete. I played baseball in university as well, and I thought I was better at baseball until I couldn't hit the curveball apparently. But I had a great experience. I was kind of two-sport athlete for the first little while, and then I just focused on football at the end of my university career. And it was amazing. I was just so lucky to go to UBC. I remember the first day I got to Vancouver after living in Calgary for 17 years, and I was just blown away. I was like, holy smokes, this is such
mountains, it's bigger.
Mountains and just the campus, actually UBC campus itself. I'm not sure. Did you ever play out there? I guess, you played in the Grey or the,
so
you
we
played
were there the Grey Cup, but we practiced in the Thunderbird Stadium where you used to play.
That's right. Yeah. Because I remember I went to the game. I think you were playing the year that you guys won
we were against Laval. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In BC Place, right?
Yeah.
So I think I went to that game. But yeah, so I just being at UBC, being on that campus, it was just an amazing thing, amazing. And a lot of those friends I met at UBC football are still my best friends today. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, I was very lucky that way.
So how did you balance with two sports, right? And then you were 3-time All-Canadian in football and in school. And I'm sure you went and you took school seriously, because the way you're talking right now about leadership, it means you went to school and you actually did your homework. So how do you handle all of the craziness that most student athletes can't right now?
Well, you're being slightly too kind. I wasn't a great student in my undergrad, to be honest. I did go to class, and I tried. I wasn't, when you're 17, 18-year-old, different mindset. I got quite good at school later in life. When I went back, it took me 10 years to do my undergrad, because I did 4 years and then I got drafted. I started playing. I went back for 6 years in a row to finally finish my undergrad. So I'm the Van Wilder of UBC history. I think if I had one more semester, that it would have timed out and I wouldn't have been able to graduate. So, I don't know, it was a really challenging juggling act for sure. I would do like baseball. I'd be going from football to baseball training, like back and forth. And and then, pretty tight on cash. So just eating like 2 days old Benny's bagels at UBC. I used to get like $1.50 for a bag, 6 bagels, and just crush them all day with some peanut butter. So you made it work. But I look back at that time as like just an amazing positive experience. I think, I have kids now, and we're fortunate, better than I lived, which every parent wants to make things better for their kids than you had it. But the other side of it is like, how do I toughen these kids up? They're getting soft. I mean, there wasn't much, there's no fabrication. I was kind of born into a tough situation.
I was gonna ask you, Javier, your comment about winning by 30, going back and still running hills. Do you think teams and kids right now are getting softer, or do you think that it's a different style of playing right now, or just in general in life?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. I know the narrative is everyone's getting softer, but I feel like every generation does this.
Yeah.
It's our turn to say that, oh, I used to walk up the hill, uphill both ways in the snow, and you guys don't walk to school. So I don't know what the answer is. I think probably on the mental health, digital technology side, it's probably much harder for kids these days, right? Like I couldn't imagine being
like focusing in school with all the stuff around
imagine how hard it is, or like the way people talk and caring about what people think. And when you're 12, 13 years old, and now you have all these digital technologies. I can imagine. My kids are 9, 7, and 3, so I haven't quite got there yet. But from that side, I would say it's much harder, probably, and they'd have to be more tough that way. On the actual sports side, it seems to be a little softer.
No pads practice on Thursdays.
Yeah, some for good reason. Some for good reason, right? We have more data now. If you have the data, you should. Like I saw that Jeff Bezos, like when he stepped down or moved to chairman, he said his big saying is like, if you have the data, you should use it. You should use the data to make a decision. But most times you don't have the data, so you go on your gut. But in football, we didn't have the data for a long time, right? Now we have the data. So, if you can make things safer and less headshots and all that kind of stuff for kids, of course you should do it. It's like a no-brainer. But, at the time when we were growing up, we were doing pit drills every single day, every single practice before the game. We would do, if we did Oklahoma and those kind of things, if you remember those drills.
Oh, yeah.
So we did the one where you lay on your back, helmet to helmet, and say, go get up and smash each other. So like do that every single day, right? And I'm sure they don't do that anymore, and probably for good reason. But yeah, it was an interesting time. So are they softer? Potentially. But ultimately, hard work and this determination, I think it's formulated at an early age, and then it gets to a point where it's an internal thing, right? You're internally motivated or you're not. So I'm just hoping I can give my kids enough skills so they can develop their own internal voice and their own internal motivation so they can be tough.
And football is a great sport to help, I think, you develop that naturally, right? Because you're part of a team, you're part of ups and downs. You always want to be the one that's starting, but you still got to try it every single year in training camp. Even though you played last year, there's no guarantee you're going to be playing next year. So I think it almost does the toughening up for you, right?
I mean, football is a unique one, right? This is a monster. I mean, when you get to the pros, I would even push it even further. When we first started the company and we started having people join the company, like it took 6 months, it was just myself and my co-founder, and then we started hiring people, right? And I remember talking early days with my team, and I was like, could you imagine going to work, coming to this job every day, and every single day, my job is to try to fire you, to find someone better than you and replace you and tell you that, right? And it's like known. So most people can't operate this way, right? In the average world. And now football is a little different. You know what you sign up for when you go into professional sports, but it really is the most cutthroat challenge. So you have to simultaneously be teammates with your backup, and also you're competing, like to feed your family. So it's an interesting dynamic, right? Where you learn skills. I think I played almost every sport. Football is a unique sport, it really is. And then when you get up, the purest football is high school. It's the best. High school football doesn't get better than this. Then you go to university. It's also amazing. And you have the dynamics of like your social life, which is better than anything. And then you get to the pros, and pros is fun too, in a different way, but it's less pure, right? It's more cutthroat. It's more of a business, and they all have their pluses and minuses, but in terms of like learning how to perform under pressure and understanding that you need to bring it every day and prove yourself every single day, and they're watching from 2 angles every single thing you do, and then you go after practice and you shower and you watch yourself on film, and they say you stepped with your right foot, not your left foot that time. Next time you do that, you might not be playing. it's a different ball game, right? And we just had in the hiring process, we've been, depending different roles, we've been starting to ask certain roles to do like a small activity to kind of show their skills. And I find one thing I'm noticing, the more experience, or the more the person's resume looks like they've done stuff, often the less they're open to proving that they have the skills. And it's like, to me, we want to build a company, a team that doesn't matter what you did yesterday, really doesn't. Like it's, of course, we should try to find people with experience and stuff if we can, but it matters what you're going to do moving forward, right? So I don't care what you did yesterday.
Right? It's potential, not experience.
I would say to people that are watching, like, if someone's giving you an activity as part of the last step for a job interview, your attitude with how you take that task is what they're really measuring. Like, are you open to it? Are you willing to be challenged? Are you willing to try to have a growth mindset? If you just say, look at my resume, like I don't need to prove
I don't
myself.
have the time, or
right. Like just, either take me or don't take me.
Like, it reminds me of the case of interviews where it doesn't matter if you get the right answer or not. It's, can you logically think through the concepts and bring the interview with you on how you think?
Yeah, right?
For sure.
I mean, we're a pretty technical company, so we're pretty inspired by different companies. But one thing that I learned about Elon Musk in the past is like he came to the first, I don't know, like thousands of people they hired, from what I understand. And he might be working on something else, but he'd get up and ask a couple really hard questions, right? Like really challenging. It's like, and then set the stage. It's not going to be easy to work here. It's going to be challenging. We're going to push you that harder than you've ever pushed before. How are you going to handle these types of questions? And I think that, like, in the process of working with a company starts in the interview, right? It starts in the first call. It starts in the screen call, right? Where you're setting the tone about how you as a company are going to operate with your staff, and how that candidate's going to show the company what they're all about. So I think that this stuff is like super critical.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't really use these, at least from the business standpoint. I think managers or leaders can really use more of these factors, or pointers when interviewing people, versus just the technical stuff. Because it's like, how does somebody handle themselves before and after the interview? How do they respond on time? What's their attitude like? How are they, if we go back to the office, when we go back to the office, how do they interact with other people around them before they put on a show for you in your office, right? Those are the small things.
Yeah. I would also argue there's some additional nuances, like we're in kind of in the innovation tech space, and there's not, how do you hire someone to do a job that they've never done before, or like no one's done before? So you can't have experience for this, or it's very unlikely that they've done this. So what I've boiled that after 7 years of hiring people, I've learned that, like, there was a saying, I can't remember which sports athlete said it. I can't remember. Maybe Mike Tyson, can't remember. But it's like, hard work's between you and you, right? It's up to you. Like, effort and attitude, those things you can control, right? And I say to everyone who starts here, we're hiring quite fast right now. We're starting like lots of people, and I say, all I ask of you, especially the first little while, is an attitude and effort. Like, those things you can control. You can't control how much experience you have. You can't control if you've worked on something like this before, but if you have an open mentality and an open mind, and then you try really hard, like you just put effort, like a lot of effort, and you're gonna, even if you're not getting things, you're not progressing the way we like, we're gonna work with you, right? Like you're gonna get a lot of mulligans when you have that type of attitude. But if you're not working hard and you're not trying, you have a closed mentality, it's gonna be really challenging to grow and to be able to get people to want to help you.
And that's not the culture anybody wants to build anyways, right? And I think that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, how did you, so like, I want to talk about a lot of the concepts right now you're bringing forward are about team and, coming together as one, and the attitude. So walk me through when you got drafted, right? I think there's a time when you were backup, special teams, before you became the starter. What was the journey like, and how did you really come every single day to practice, knowing that you're going to one day get the starting spot?
Wow. You're bringing out a lot of memories I haven't thought about in a long time. It's funny, it's been 10 years since I retired, and it feels like I don't even think about football anymore. It feels like it didn't even happen. It feels like so long ago. but back to those high school days being formative, and my coach yelling at me saying, "Goal line means the goal line. Touch, go all the way to the end. Touch the
Yeah.
line. Don't just stop 2 yards short." Or you'd be amazed what your body can do if you put your mind to it. It's
Yeah.
all these little sayings that my coach used to say. Early state, so I actually had another formative thing. I think it's been pretty big on who I've become. My last year at UBC, so I played 4 years. I broke my leg on like my second last game of the year, and I was like doing quite well. Had a broken leg, broken fibula, dislocated ankle, so it was pretty bad. I had to kind of have surgery right away, and it was I was pretty devastated at that time in my
That was a
life
draft year, right?
for my draft year, and I
Yeah.
was like all in. It's hard. I mean, that's another thing I've learned. People say even when it's professional athletes, like, how could this professional athlete have not thought about life after sports? They had all this time, and they're not planning for the future. It's like, you're not planning for the future. You're trying to compete at the highest level every single day. You're not thinking about, maybe I should go get my realtor license. You're trying to be the best, right? And you're trying to compete every day. You're not thinking, maybe as soon as your mind goes to, oh, maybe I should think about this over. Now, I do encourage athletes to start doing this. I get it. I learn now, but I also understand the mentality of being like, I am all in on this. Like, I have
You got to
everything to
focus.
lose, and I'm
Yeah.
focused, and I'm not working on other stuff. So that's how I was in my last year at university, and like I was pretty disappointed. So I ran a terrible 40, and I dropped quite a bit on the draft, and all this kind of stuff happened. And luckily, BC had, just because we're down the street, they had watched me for the last couple of years, and they kind of knew what I was all about. So they drafted me, and then I had like a really good. I barely made it to camp, so so basically the lesson learned was major setback, huge physical rehabilitation, but it was really the mental side which was the hardest, right? Mentally get yourself out of every day to go and put your foot in it and move your foot this much for 4 months. So 4 months of barely moving your foot every single day.
When you know in your mind that somebody's already training,
Yeah,
right?
you're
Yeah.
going backwards, right? Because you're also not doing what you could have been. There's opportunity costs, as you learn in
Hmm.
business. Like, what you could have been doing is not happening, and you're just trying to get yourself back. So long story short, I got drafted. I just got to camp. I was still pretty not feeling great my first camp, but I had, I think, quite a good first year. And then last game of my rookie year, on a kickoff, I hit a shoe right here, like full speed, and ruptured my pectoral major.
Wow.
So I had to get this. So I've been, only twice have I come off the field so far in my football life, and it was,
Last
you
game
know,
of fourth
to
year.
get surgery the next morning. I'm putting a metal plate in my leg, and then to rupture my pec major when they had to put it back on. Same
Oh,
surgeon. So then boom, I go through the whole rehabilitation. So now it's 2 years in a row, and no, doubt starts to creep in. Even the coaches start saying, "Oh, you're injury prone." I remember saying, I've only come out of the game twice. It's just, both were reconstructive surgeries. Come on, give me a break. So I rehabbed for a long time. Got back to the next year, and I was so motivated. I was so all in, and I had a great camp. Everything was going well my second year. Still playing on backup in special teams, but I was starting, I think, to like show that I had potential. And I was really, I look back, I'm not super proud of all the things I did, but I was really pushing hard to be, I was like very clear to everyone, I wanted to be a starter. I wanted to take more of a role in the team. And then the 12th game, I tore my ACL. So on the old BC line, BC turf,
yep.
if you know. So three years in a row,
3 injuries.
three reconstructive surgeries, and like with like 6 month plus rehabs, right? So that whole mental period of my life, those 3 years,
Most people would have probably called it a career at that point.
potentially, I mean, I've seen, obviously there's been
Yeah.
others, but for me, it was pretty devastating. And then, yeah, you start, doubt creeps in. Hey, is it going to be? So that was my second year. And then the third year, 2015. So 2015 came back. We had a great start. We were 11-0 actually. And then we had quite a bad ending. But anyway, that year was great. I kind of started to like play a lot more. And then the fourth year was when I became a full-time starter, and then I started for many years after that. So and then I played for a long time without getting seriously injured.
Mhm.
I missed a bit where I had to get that same plate taken out later, so that caused me some problems. But I guess the lesson learned is, like, when you get really pushed down, right? Really pushed down, you can get into a very dark, very dark place.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for business, right? You look at some of these businesses in the last 12 months who just
Very
like the
true.
top line revenue went to zero overnight because of, mandates and
Hmm.
stuff like that. I mean, this is very mentally challenging stuff. So I have a lot of empathy for these people, and I feel like I've been there in a way before. I've kind of failed before
Yeah.
and had to come back, and that's probably a good thing though for me.
So I think it's, if you had to sum it up in one sentence for everybody right now, that is probably in the hole that you were in your first 3 years, what would that be to come back out of this?
One sentence. I mean, I guess I would
A few
say,
sentences.
well, I got the best advice I've ever been given from, it's so simple, and maybe other people will feel the same way. My um my professor in my business school, when we first started the company, he would just like go have beers with us and try to,
Yeah.
hey, what are we doing? And we tell him what we're doing, and then he used to always finish with the same thing. He used to say, keep going.
Wow.
That's it. Just keep going. And when you get hurt, you just got to keep going. That's all there's to it. There's nothing you can do about it. You just got to keep going. And you
That's
might
amazing.
feel like quitting that day, go to sleep. I still have times like this recently. You have a bad day. In my job now, I get punched. I come to work, I get punched in the face. I go home. That's how
Yeah.
I feel
And almost
sometimes.
every day, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly. So when you feel that way, just go to sleep, get up the next day, and keep going. That's
keep
like
going.
I
Just
do.
as you said, what you can control is your attitude, right? That's
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So I know you said, Javier, that a lot of times the athletes are so focused on their sports, it's tough to also focus on a career after sports. So how did you make the transition? That you started this company, did you know that your career is going to be only 10 years, five, whatever it was? Did you start making plans beforehand? Did you start focusing on the side? How did you transition?
I wasn't a great role model in my undergrad for school. Like I was okay, but I tell the kids now, I was like, just don't do what I did. Do it right the first time. It's much
Mm.
easier. Read the books, do the work, right? It's like don't spend 10 years graduating your undergrad. So when it comes to like when I was doing football, I was all in. I'm talking, I had no plans. I had no idea what I was going to do. No idea. Like maybe be a fireman, uh, wasn't sure. Everyone said, because what did I have my 10,000 hours in? I was pretty good at football, good at coaching. It seemed like I probably could be a coach. And what happened was my second last year, I lost my starting spot in my last year with the Lions, and it really hurt me. Like I felt like I was playing individual. It's another great lesson. Individually, I was doing probably the best I had ever done, but our team was struggling, right? And I was a leader. So what do you do when you want to make change? You don't get rid of the second or third string special teamer. You go after the starting middle linebacker, right? So I was demoted, which again was I didn't do very well. I did okay with it at the time. I tried, but another great experience for me. I'm so grateful this happened actually, because if that didn't happen, a lot of things in my life would be different, right? Because I started like seriously contemplating. I wanted to keep playing, so I played my last year on a different team, which was great experience for me. I learned that, like what happens now a lot in business, someone comes and says the grass is greener over here, go try it, right? And then you go over there and like, wait a second, it's not exactly what I thought it was. So building 7 years of equity and relationships and team, I should have stayed my last year probably. But that was a growth opportunity for me. So when I went into that year, this off season going into my last year, I went and there's a gentleman by the name of Bill Waymark. He's what's part of the Water Boys here in Vancouver. So the Water Boys are like a booster kind of thing for the Lions. And he, for years, he'd be saying, "Hey, listen, if you want, I'd love to take you for coffee and just help you out in terms of life after football or whatever, anything I do to help you." And I always said no, not because I thought, I just didn't think I'm not just going to go out for you to help me. I didn't understand what networking was at that time in my life.
Yeah, it's odd. It's odd when you're a football player, fully
Yeah,
focused.
exactly. Now I look like it's the most
Yeah,
powerful thing you can do. Right? Go network and build relationships, of course.
yeah.
But at the time, I was a bit of a knucklehead. I didn't know that. So finally, I just said yes one day, and he was been extremely helpful for me. He sat me down and said, "Hey, what do you want to do? How many kids do you want to have? What do you want to live? What type of thing?" And I didn't have any answers. And he was like,
Wow.
you gotta get your stuff together, different terms. And he challenged me, right? And what he did is he said, he was a former like executive of a big company for many years
Wow.
and a very successful business guy. And he said, listen, when I was hiring senior people, like for big jobs, I would send them to this other industrial psychologist named Larry Steffen, guy here in Vancouver who's still around, kicking around. And Larry Steffen would do a proper analysis, like they do like, Myers-Briggs and all this kind of stuff, but they do intelligence tests and it was more on management and more on business type stuff. But he said, listen, if you want, he's backlogged, but he said, I'll call him and see if he can sneak you in there and maybe. And so I paid a little bit of money, and it didn't do the full thing like you would normally do, but he just did all the testing. And this was the first time when I got a little bit of confidence, because I was kind of a little bit down at that point, and he was like, hey, listen, tests came back in terms of all these things that I was kind of surprised, quite frankly. He's like, listen, have you thought about business? He's like, you might want to, and then he goes, I was like, no, not really. I mean, now I look back, of course, I had a lot of those traits that you want to look for in entrepreneurship, but I wasn't thinking that way. And then he's like, hey, maybe you should just get some skills, like go back to school and learn how to like run Excel. I hadn't run Excel. I didn't know how to make a copy in the copy machine. Like I knew nothing, right? I've been playing football for my entire 20s. I was 30 years old, and I had no skills, like business skills. So I went back to school, and that's when it started. I did internship for a year. My last year, I was doing courses during the year online. And I was loving it. I was like doing accounting. This is great. I was really enjoying accounting of all things. Awesome. And so doing it like nights before the games, I would have like you didn't have Zoom at the time, but we would have like team calls right before I was playing the game, like, that next morning on the road. And that's what I just knew in my last year. I knew I was ready to move on, and I was excited about it. So yeah. And then I internship for a year for free. Basically, I got paid like a little bit, but like I didn't, which Bill helped me with. And I shadowed a guy, Craig, who became a friend after, but I was basically just for a year, I went to all these real estate development meetings and construction sites. And I was just like being spongy, trying to be the first one in, last one to leave kind of thing, build relationships. And I just learned so much. And that's another great piece of advice. I think you should, there's a lot of people out there talking about this stuff, but what I've learned is people work for people, so go find the best people you can work with and work to learn, right? The money will come. You work to learn. Learn gives you, when you learn, you get skills, and those skills you can monetize later, especially if you have lots of patience. So I worked for a year for free, basically. It was the best thing. And I learned a lot of what I use for this company now. Basically, the whole foundation of this company I learned in that year.
Such a powerful story, right? And the one thing that stands out, Javier, is you took any time there was a setback or a failure, you didn't let it define your career or your life. It was more like, okay, this happened. How do we now adjust and keep moving forward? Like, let's say your last or second last year and then you look back, you say it's the best thing that happened to you, because if that didn't happen to you, it wouldn't have allowed you to go on this path to get your education, do something for free. If you didn't do that 1 year internship for free, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing today. So I think we almost need a perspective and redefine setbacks or failure as more like execution or iterations, right? Adjustments in our long-term career, I guess.
For sure. And I want to be clear, like those times I talk about those injuries, it's not like I woke up the next day and I had the positivist attitude and said, I'm going to conquer it today and stuff. I mean, I dealt with things very poorly lots of times, right? And I did a lot of things. I did opposite of what I'm saying now, right? A lot, it's negative and self-deprecating, all kind of stuff. But eventually I got through it. Like, and you just kind of have to get back to keep going. So yeah, I feel fortunate so I just want to make it clear. It's not like I was like, oh yeah, I got all these problem things. I just woke up the next day and tackled it, and I was a positive attitude. Not at all. I was like, it was terrible. I was, and I was like, I'm not happy with how I responded to a lot of things. But part of that experience, like you say, it turns you into who you are today. And now when I talk with young people in our company, I have wisdom's an interesting one. It takes a little while to get it. I'm starting to slightly see how over time you can turn, experience into wisdom and knowledge into wisdom. But, I'm starting to be able to have a little bit more tools to go back to people and say, have you thought about this? I know you're thinking about this way right now, but you might wake up tomorrow and it looks different because I've been there before.
It's beautiful. It was awesome. Well, hey, one last question for you, Javier. So from from business perspective, right? So you are a CEO, you're overseeing the company, co-founder of the company. Football, the entire business you've built is very heavily influenced from the game of football and the way you're hiring people. what message do you have, or what would you say an executive of a large company today, right, that is struggling or needs help? And what message would you give them that they can apply something from the world of sports, whether strategy, teamwork, execution, solving problems that might help them in their journey?
Football has a way of just humbling you, right? Like you could be the best. Like I had a great teammate, Brent Johnson, defensive end. He was like the best player in the league, and on the defensive side of the ball, like won all the awards. And then we had a guy named Cam Wake who all of a sudden was like 10 times better than him. And then and Brent's obviously a great, awesome guy, a mature guy. But I'm sure for about 5 minutes he might have been like, "Wait a second, what happened here?" I'm not the bee's knees anymore. So one thing I think was worked really well for us so far, and at whatever level of success we had is like, you just can't stop trying to get better. You just can't stop trying to get better. Like it's even when you think you have, product market fit, or you have different, customers paying you, your recurring revenue looks good. You just can't, because if you stop getting better, you start, people around you feel that energy, and it's a knock-on effect, right? So it's like, if you're not trying to improve yourself and your company, people don't see how they're going to improve themselves within that company. And like in football, you have this thing as a defensive back, you gotta have a short memory, they say. So you get burned burned for a touchdown, and there's still 50 plays left in the game. So if you want to mail it in and feel bad for yourself, you don't have time. You don't have time to feel bad for yourself. The next play literally comes within a couple minutes, you're back at it, right? So you have to just erase that. And like that's kind of how, so at the most minute level, it's like you have to have a short memory in business. You have to be able to say, okay, this happened. Didn't go the way I wanted to, but right away, like it's gone now. And like I'm moving forward, and don't carry that with me. And then there's like a bigger level of just like when you're, as the best player in the league, there's always someone nipping at your heel. There's always that someone coming for you that forces you to be getting better and get better. And you do have an expiry date on your career, and you have an expiry date on a business, right? So you have to be careful not to take that for granted, and just keep going, like, and really improving yourself every day. I think this is something my co-founders helped me a lot with. We built a lot of systems to learn. We're very passionate about this. And a lot of it is coming from sports too.
Yeah. No matter how much you win by, make sure you go back and run the hills, right?
Yeah, exactly. Win by 30 and they be up there. Sweet. You guys aren't you got as good as you think you are. He was right. You need to hear that. So a great coach tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So it's ultimately, I do this with my team. I'm big on no rules right now. I don't know if you read that book. It's the Netflix culture. And what Reed Hastings says a lot is like, you got to give a culture of feedback with positive intent. But if you're not giving people feedback, even hard, critical feedback, you don't care about them. So it's like, how do you, so that's a coach. You care about your players. Yeah. If you care about your player, you don't just tell them how great they are all the time. You tell them all the areas they need to improve, and you actually challenge them, and you show them that there's no way you can ever reach your full potential. Technically, you can always get better. So, same thing in a company, right? It's no different.
That's amazing. Well, hey, I mean, this has been one of the best episodes, Javier. And I mean, just learning about your career, your setbacks, and how you applied it to business. I'm sure everybody listening and watching when we release this episode, probably going to take away a lot of stuff personally. I know I am. And also from a business perspective, apply it to their day-to-day. So thank you so much for sharing all this.
Thank you. That was great. It flew by. It was a lot of fun, and I thought you did awesome too. That you're like you say, you're getting better every day with these podcasts. So absolutely. I'm excited to see episode 200 and 2000, and see where you can get to.
We can do 100th one. We can do it again. So let's see. Where can everybody learn about your business?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn's our main area where we do marketing. And it's called CAD Makers, CADMAKERS.
CAD Makers.
Yeah, we have two products, CM Builder and CMEXE. So cmbuilder.io, cmexe.io. Go check it out if you're in the construction world.
There we go. Awesome. Right. Thanks a lot, man.
Take care.
Team, remember to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. And visit tanvirbangu.com for a ton of free content and exercises.